there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Drexler Dupre. We meet here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Actually, we might change that to noon, but we'll address this later. We'll meet here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Second Life time, and when we do not have a special guest, I refer to the program as a free for all or the free for all edition, which is today. We don't have a special guest. We have a whole bunch of special guests, and they're all in the audience. And I'll pan over to the audience in a second. Let me just say a big thank you to the folks who make this book club possible. Strawberry Linden in charge of camera. Normally, today I am streaming. But normally when we have the marquee events, she does the streaming and she does a fabulous job. Brett Linden helps out with security marketing. Patch Linden, the whole governance team, they put this venue together. And the moles active stuff. So, welcome to the free for all edition. We got a big full house. Let me pan to the house. Oh my God. So we got Misty up there in the fern. We got Momi. We got Rebel, Mariana Griffin, Ollie Fairport, Svea, Emmy, Con Sweeney sitting here on stage with me. Go Speed Racer. Strawberry Linden is right there. AJ, Angelica, Elfbiter, Sky Smith, Stella Wicks, Kayla. One Kayla. Oh, hello Kayla. Maybe Kayla is new here. Take a seat. I don't know if there's still seats available. We got Margie Preuss. We got Quibble down here, and Becky Hansen, Wyomano, Alomonas, Tamu, Eric, Tish, Siri. Siri won a book here already. I don't have anything to give away today. Will you still stay? Cat Sparks, McKenna CeeLo, and Fluffy. I think Fluffy is sleeping here. What's up with him? We gotta wake him up. So today I have a tentative subject that we can address. We don't have to. As you know, this is the free for all edition where we can go back and forth, and the preliminary or tentative subject is not in any way, shape, or form mandatory. Also, quick shout out to Silas Merlin, who has been making these sculptures here. These are all custom made sculptures. He makes a new one for every guest. And these are basically, well, they are hand carved uh, out of mesh, and every guest gets one of them. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that so awesome? There's a little thing here on the front. I was a guest on the SL Book Club, and all I got was this Dragon Drax with a little typo. The theme for today is, can reading reduce anxiety? So I would love to hear personal stories, really sort of concrete stories if you want, and you can share this in text or in voice. Uh, where reading has helped you reduce anxiety. I mean, this is a time of great anxiety. We're still all on lockdown or shelter in place or whatever it's currently called. And if you're not one of the frankly, completely irresponsible people who act like 12-year-olds running around outside and saying, "Oh, the government is oppressing me. I want to get a haircut." Then you are inside with anxiety. Ray, please do take a seat. Ray is probably new here. Welcome. He brought his transistor radio. Ray, you are in the book club here. Welcome. You can right click on a sofa or on a chair behind you, and then you can sit down if you want. You're currently on the stage. So this is the theme for today, and I'll monitor chat. Please do chime in. I want to open today as well with a question of what everybody is reading. So let's start with that. Also important, um, I'm compiling a reading list of what folks are mentioning. And that reading list goes to bookshop.org/shop/Dragster Reads. Maybe AJ, you can put that into the local chat. Bookshop.org is a wonderful outlet kind of the anti-Amazon. They only ship in the US right now. They're expanding to Canada shortly or soon, as they say, and they give 75% of their profit to local bookstores. So this is a really cool thing. Bookshop.org/shop/Dragster So let's make the round. Everyone, type into local chat, what are you reading right now? What are you planning to read? What have you just completed? And let's use text. I know that Khan, I'll draw on you later with voice because I know you're comfortable with voice, which is great. And we'll talk about that. And yeah, put your current reading lists, books into the chat, and also please do email them to me so I can compile them. That's easier. We had a method of local IM direct message. I'm sorry, and that was difficult to compile. So the email is slbookclub@dragster.com. slbookclub@dragster.com. So what are you guys reading? So we have Khan is reading The Necromancer's Library by J.L. Bryan. Not familiar with it, but sounds really good. uh, Halomonas is reading Most Intimate, A Zen Approach to Life's Challenges by O'Hara. Night Shift Dragons by Rachel Aaron. Just did a reread of the previous book in the series, Refresher Part-Time Gods. This is all really good stuff. And if you want, you can, you know, you don't have to write a whole paragraph, but maybe a few sentences what it is about and what you like about it. And if people want to chime in with a voice, now's your chance. Open your microphone and speak. Speak to me or forever hold your peace. And Balder, please have a seat. Siri is reading The Moment of Live by Melinda Gates. Stella Proust and the Squid. Oh, the story and science of the reading brain. Very interesting. Unethology by Amy Alkin. No, I actually heard about this book. This is on my list. Don't forget to email it. slbookclub@dragster.com. And we also have someone here in the chat on YouTube saying Meteor Guri is reading The Swarm. Is The Swarm by Frank Schätzing, a German sci-fi author? Because I'm actually talking to his agent. I hope that he comes in here. That would be really cool. He's a heavyweight here in Germany, Frank Schätzing. Really, I think on par with some of the international bigwigs like Neil Stevenson. Um, oh, and for escapism, I have House of Glass, time travel, mystery romance. Now, mystery romance and time travel. Oh my God, this combines everything. Elfbiter Skysmith is reading more on Common Law by A.P. Herbert, Plot Whisperer by M. Alderson, technically Clausewitz. Um, Please do email them and we compile it. Now, let me tell you about reading and anxiety. Uh, and please write your personal stories in the chat and I'll read them. And if you find a pause, you can also just open your mic and talk over me or open your mic so I can hear that you guys are wanting to speak up and I'll shut up momentarily. I know Khan is opening his mic. Awesome. Khan, then I'll bring you in right after my little anecdote about reading and anxiety. And I've said this before, this is a very simple thing that I do. I bookend my day with reading, and I highly recommend it. So I use reading as a type of meditation. Um, I start the day. Con, now you could actually close your mic. You have a lot of background noise, and then I'll
Fine.
just bring it open. I just wanted to hear if you're open, but if we have that much background noise, we gotta close it and keep it quiet in the background, please. Um, so I'm bookending my day with reading because here's the thing, and there's a lot of research about this too. If you start your day with, and I think a lot of people do this, looking at social media or looking at what happened overnight in the news, this is not good. I'm not suggesting not being informed, not keeping an eye on what's happening, but do this with context. It is very important to start your day with the refreshed brain, not filling it up with things that are out of context and trigger anxieties. Anxieties are triggered, and this is at its most basic a chemical process, and you can prevent that by getting up and being mindful, sort of narrating to yourself what you're doing, and then grab your favorite novel, even if it's mystery, romance, freaking time travel. Oh my God, please email me this book. Um, so that's very important. You can then go to, as I do later on in the day, you can listen to your favorite podcast. You can listen to an investigative piece on The Intercept or other really, really good media outlets, or on the media, or WNYC is my go-to public radio station. But don't start the day with it. And then, it's really a nutritional thing. And at the end of the day, when you're overwhelmed by what happened during the day, when you're frustrated that you didn't get everything done, when you're, as we talked earlier, have battled with three teenagers in your lockdown situation, and you're all still alive. I mean, you know, if you're already, if the cops are already on the scene because some brawl started, then of course it's too late. But if you're still alive and cordial with each other, but nonetheless somewhat frustrated, then end the day with that mystery science. I was going to say mystery romance time travel novel. Um, so Khan, how about you in terms of reading and anxiety? And Khan, if you want to tell us briefly who you are
Sure.
and how you're related
Uh,
to the book industry.
yep. I'm Con Sweeney. I'm a independent social media advisor, and I work with writers, helping them develop their social media programs to promote their books. Given the emergency, there's been a lot of interest lately in virtual formats like Second Life, as well as other social media platforms. I also sit on the board of directors of the Mr. Writers of America, the New York chapter, where I handle social media for them, and we're in the process now of trying to help writers virtual launches of their books.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, somebody say something?
No, no, that was somebody else. Keep going.
Okay. Yep. So I've been in Second Life for on and off for 10 years. And I heard of Drax's book club several weeks ago, and I came by and been very impressed with the his presentation, the authors he's brought on, as well as the subjects he has discussing every week. So I'm looking forward to hopefully doing more work in the future here. As for reading for anxiety, I've read many times in my life when, particularly when I had a full-time corporate job and things seemed to be getting crazy. I always used to enjoy reading travel stories, particularly people who would do things like
Ah.
long hikes across the country by themselves. I once read a book about a man who hitchhiked across America. He was a journalist. He hit a point in his career where he just felt that he needed to do something different, which was where I was. He doesn't recommend doing it. It's kind of dangerous for, among other things. But it was a very interesting book, and his observations of the people he met along the way and what the journey meant to him meant a lot to me.
Hmm.
Um, I've also enjoyed books of people who have sailed around the world by themselves. The idea of a person being out there in the middle of nowhere for months on end, everything up to them has always been appealing to me.
So this
So
is also, but
travel,
it's also in relation to where you were at the time in your life. I mean, somewhat sort of with a routine and geographically limited, I guess. So I wonder if people who are on the sailboat or have sort of the luxury and the privilege to sail around the world all day. I'm just wondering what they would read. Maybe they want to read the life of an office worker. As
maybe you have a good point there. I'm not sure, but for me, it worked. It was just a
Mhm.
very entertaining diversion. Uh, the writing would vary. Some people would be very technical in their writing, more about the latitude and longitude of where they were and where the winds were blowing. Others got more in touch with themselves about what it meant to them to be out there with nature all alone. Other people would share their recipes for what you could do with rice and beans for 5 or 6 months. Uh, the variety was good, and it helped me formulate my own journeys in life, and honestly was one of the reasons why I came into Second Life in the first place, to kind of wander by myself and see what was going on.
You know what's interesting? I was answering a chat here on YouTube. How do you feel, Con? This is a general question that I'm really fascinated by. Um, can you forgive a writer's mediocre uh, prose or what you perceive as maybe bad or not great writing if an idea is really really cool or if if
Yes.
the plot is moving along? Because I'm really torn on this. I mean, I tell this story often. I grew up with a kind of a my mother was not a literature snob. This is a little tongue in cheek, but she was always concerned about sort of the Conan and the Robert E. Howard and the pulp stuff that I was just really totally devouring. And I'm actually glad now that she opened my mind to a lot of the big literary giants of German literature, for example. But I can have this side by side. I wonder how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Um, if if the premise of the book is good, if the story is good, I will tolerate poor writing.
Hmm.
Uh, when I was studying in school in America, they were experimenting with different literature. They kind of went away from the classics and it was more contemporary. And I read some good modern authors, but I missed a lot of the classics until later in my life. And now I read them. A couple of years ago, I finally got around to reading Dr. Zhivago.
Hmm.
It was a fabulous read, and I wish I had read it earlier in my life. Uh, I like to point out, and people think I'm bragging or either that or I'm stupid, but I've read War and Peace 5 times in my life.
Hmm.
Uh, to me, it was just an incredible book that every time I read it, I learn something.
Hmm.
Also, a few times that I read it, I was doing a lot of traveling in my career, so I had the hours to read the book. But I will give an author a break. Maybe the writing is not perfect, but if it's a good story, if it's entertaining, I will go along. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever put a book down because of the author's writing.
This I'm 100% with you. Sometimes it's a little like, oh my God, this would be so much better if the writing would be better. But then, I give an A for effort to anybody who has the courage to put something out there on the page. I think it's an acknowledgement also of I don't know, just following through with this. And by the way, I want to say, because you mentioned War and Peace, I think this is another topic that we may want to do one of these days, because there is this fear of big there's it's twofold. There people are afraid of the quote unquote difficult read or the difficult book, and this is there's a complex melange of reasons, oftentimes upbringing, oftentimes feeling sort of uh, inadequate of understanding it. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel it's really important to stress uh, this this point here. There are classics in from different cultures, and they are massive. They're maybe thousands or more pages, and they're considered old-fashioned or difficult, and they don't have to be. You have to try this, folks. I mean, I'm getting into lecture mode here, and please hit me over the head with stuff. But the thing is, oh, here's Gramercy, aka Yvonne Battle Felton. Have a seat, Yvonne. Uh, I'm gonna make this point short. When you encounter a book like War and Peace or Don Quixote, or even more recent Infinite Jest, which I read twice, and it's 1,000 something pages. Um, you go to it piece by piece. You find something in it, and you find a way in it. And I just read also a book by Gottfried Keller, who is a writer from Germany, from 19th century, naturalist writer. And my son had to read this in high school, and it is it is very antiquated language. It's hard language, but the subject matter is uh is a boy and a girl. It's called Romeo and Julia auf dem Dorf. In English, it would be Romeo and Juliet and the Village. And it's basically boy meets girl. Their parents hate each other. It's a forbidden love story. Bingo. It's current. The theme is current. The placing, the world building is of course uh, from the 19th century. But we read it together, and he was like, "I can't read this crap." And I go like, "Come on, I'll spend some time with you. We're gonna read it together." And then he got into it. And yeah, you have to overcome this initial step of this language, this antiquated language, but then you will be rewarded by also a glimpse into an era, uh, and you see the commonalities of these relationships. These families hate each other, and you see the stuff that has changed. So that's the power.
I'm not put off by books just because they have too many pages. I enjoy long reads. I admire authors who can sit down and put together a 500 page, 1,000 page book. Just think of, what's involved with the continuity to keep it straight. Like War and Peace. Just think of the how Tolstoy had to keep all the characters, all the events, even though part of it was historical, in line that he could bring it to the conclusion that he did.
Right.
So I have nothing but respect for big books, and I'm not afraid of big books. I've got a relative who, when we were younger, I tried to get him interested in books, and I won't mention him for the sake of embarrassing him. And he said, I refuse to read a book that has more than 100 pages and doesn't have pictures.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I just felt very bad for him because I don't think, as he went along in his life and after he got out of university, I don't think he has read one book in his life since then.
But see, this is a common theme here where I have to also stop myself not to sound too sort of pessimistic, but I am absolutely concerned about um, the entertainment options that we have today are there's so much pressure to consume this entertainment. By pressure I mean, it's just in the cultural um, topic of, for example, what's in your Netflix queue. Okay, I always
Mhm.
answer proudly, I don't have a Netflix subscription. There's nothing in my queue. That's not a commentary on quality. It doesn't mean that Netflix puts out garbage. They put out great documentaries. It's I want to be accepted as someone who chooses to use the time that the freely available time differently. Now, the problem is that this and this is a vast subject. It has to do with sort of that anti-intellectualism has become sort of hip. That then now people are viewing me and maybe you as well as like, oh, you guys are so you know, freaking nerds, and you think you're something better because you look down on the common man's entertainment. And I said, no, absolutely not. So, but I guess I'm all over the place with that subject because
No,
right.
I take your point.
I would like to see people. I would actually like to see the hashtag binge reading trend for once. You know.
No, I agree with you. I am worried about the entertainment options that we have out there. Not so much maybe for older people, but for younger people as they come out of schools. I see children who are, preteen walking around with their eyes glued to their cell phones or their tablets out in public. Maybe they're reading, which would be good. I'm okay with digital books over hard copy, although I do love the feel of a hard book in my hands. But I am concerned in the future that will we move into a world where it's a continual digital stream and we begin to think of reading as something that you know older people do, or it's an affectation.
Yeah.
I do have that concern.
It is sort of like going to the opera or listening to Wagner or something on the weekend. That kind of that vibe. But other people would disagree, and I had several authors on that gave me hopes, very optimistic folks. Gramercy is with us on the couch. Gramercy is Yvonne Battle Felton, who is a phenomenal author with a book Remembered about generational trauma in the African American community. And actually, um, I want to get to this in a sec, but I want to read a few things that scrolled here. Stella Wicks said, "I tried to read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand in high school, but I think I enjoy it much more as an adult. Not necessarily a classic." Well, Stella, maybe well, maybe I'll have a show on Ayn Rand. I mean, my opinion about Ayn Rand, I think, is well known. I think she is. At best a very flawed human being, and at worst a terrible snakes all saleswoman. I could care less about her output if it hadn't seeped into a specific group of politicians who think that her philosophy of egotism is the way to move us forward. But I think she has been discredited over the years. And but I do walk by Atlas Shrugged at my used bookstore once a week. Well, not now on lockdown, but I always think like I really have to get this book and read it to really understand like how crazy this woman is. But there is a book that I recommend which has Ayn Rand in it as an AI, okay? And please someone look this up on bookshop.org and put it in the chat. It's the book is called The Public Works Trilogy by Matt Ruff. Matt Ruff was guest here on the book club. He's also the author of Lovecraft Country, which is being developed by HBO right now. It's premiering, I think, in September. Matt Ruff is coming back next week to talk about Lovecraft Country and his 88 Names. But he wrote a book called Sewer, Gas, and Electric, the Public Works Trilogy. And in that book, Ayn Rand has a huge role as a tiny little person, a tiny little AI in a glass bottle. And it's hilarious. And she is arguing with the ghost of Abby Hoffman. It's completely insane. Yvonne, if you want to chime in anytime, push your speak button. What else is going on in the chat? Um, Stella, you will enjoy this book. This is the wackiest book I've read in a long time. It's very much like the Illuminati trilogy. Is really cool. Did I scroll by a lot of other comments? I'm scrolling back here. Let me see. Those are the best books to me, the ones you can learn something new from each time you read it. Do you think perhaps you gained new insight each time because your own views had grown as you got older? Oh, this is a great comment by oh, you have an interesting. I don't see your name. Is this Rebel? Uh, yeah, Con. How about you with War and Peace? I mean, when you look at it through different lenses of your own life, I mean, things
Yes,
change and
definitely. Since the five times I read it were probably over about a 20-year period in my life. Uh, the first time I went through it more for a school reading. Um, I took a course in high school on the literature of war, if you can believe it, and
wow.
had a
Uh-huh.
very good instructor. But it was still kind of new to me. I read it several times later on after having read books about Russia in the pre-revolutionary period, the revolution, uh, books about the Napoleonic Wars, and in later years I had a better understanding of the frame of reference the book was written in, and I was able to get more into the characters and what was going on. And yeah, as I got older, my appreciation of it changed a great deal. I appreciated the book more. And trust me, you don't read a book like War and Peace more than once unless you feel you're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And probably one of these days, I'll probably pick up a copy and take another stab at it for the sixth time.
One sec. I'm gonna. If people know how to mute people, just bring down their fader, and then we'll have peace and quiet. But also, please be nice to the noobs. Be mindful of the noobs. If you see someone who was born yesterday, literally, just tell them welcome to the book club, and here's what you do. Please sit down. Wait for your turn, and all this kind of good stuff. Or Headmaster Dragster will throw you out. Um,
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Here's Yvonne. Finally. We've been
Well,
waiting for you.
I've been rendering and downloading and had all sorts of adventures on my way here today. But as far as books, there are books, at least for me as well, that so if I reread Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, then I feel like each time I read that I'm at a different point in my life. And when I first tried to read it, I was, I don't know, like 17. And I was just like, I wanted to go back to the university, but I had just found out that my full scholarship didn't actually mean full in the ways that I needed it to. And so, like, I was working and I was just like at a weird place mentally. And I read it and I felt like there were things that I maybe I didn't appreciate at that time. And then reading it again when I was at a different point in my life, but also like I had experienced some different things, and it gave me even more than I read it, like than I got from it when I read it the first time. So each time I'm reading her book, and it can be the same exact book, but what's changing is me and my relationship to other people or my experiences. And I just have like a different wealth of experiences to draw on, and I can look at some characters and be like, I may not still like this character, but I can certainly see where they're coming from or understand them differently.
Right. What was the title of the book again, please?
Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Hmm.
It's by Zora Neale Hurston.
Please, folks, don't forget to email me the titles that you mentioned and I compile it into the reading list. Um, Yvonne, I was going to ask you because, I mean, I really love your book, and your book is a tough read with a tough subject matter, a lot of violence in it, and the sort of the theme, the broad theme that's floating around here today is can reading reduce anxiety? And I have to tell you, maybe I'm an outlier here, but I want to have other people's opinion. I completely understand that in a time like this, you grab romance or you grab escapist fare for whatever reason. For how I don't know why I'm wired like this. I can read your book at the end of the day, and I get completely emotionally invested in the characters who are enslaved, who are kidnapped, who are brutalized, who commit suicide so that they cannot bear um, or become pregnant with basically more slaves for the master, and then that violence continues in violence in an urban environment. Um, I can read this and I can be enraged by it and also by the repercussions that we see today in America specifically. But I still it still reduces my anxiety in a weird way. So um, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in a time like this where I'm affected by the anxiety of what's going on in the physical world as anybody else, I can still take a novel that is based on real events like yours and find a way to kind of a meditative resolve within it. So this may be due to your writing, how it's ultimately actually a kind of a peaceful package despite all this trauma that's happening in this family, maybe, but maybe it's I don't know. Please psychoanalyze me. You have 15 minutes. I'll pay you later.
Well, you'll be happy to learn I did take one psychology class back in the 80s, and so I am fully qualified. No, I'm kidding. Um, I
So
did take the
because
class, but I'm not fully
I gave a
qualified.
friend of mine, I tell the story also, I gave a friend of mine Infinite Jest, which deals with a lot of, there's a character, literally Madame Psychosis. I mean, it deals with mental illness, it deals with heavy themes. And I gave this to a friend of mine for her birthday, and she was really mad at me because she's suffering on and off from depression for decades. And she said, why are you giving me this book? I can't read it. I can't. And I was like, oh yeah, right. So anyway,
Mm. I like what you said about, so maybe part of it is down to the writing, but I would say that, wouldn't I? But ideally, I think for me, at least, the aim is that readers will approach the book and they will get to know the characters and they will learn. their experiences and their story, because it's the power of stories, I think, that bring us together and that we learn from an experience. And I was seeing someone's comment and they were talking about how slavery has been around for millions of years. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's absolutely the problem. The problem is that it's been around millions of years, and they said nothing has changed. And while nothing has changed, we need to change that. We need to step up and we need to look at people as individuals, and we need to respect everyone's journey, and we need to listen to people's stories and give them space to share their stories and learn from them and each other and ourselves, because we are making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yep.
And so what I try to do and remembered is it's a difficult subject to read. It was a difficult subject to write, but damned if it wasn't a difficult subject for people to live. And so I think for me, at least, I will continue to write stories that make people uncomfortable, that make me as a writer uncomfortable, so that we can investigate and continue to investigate the things that we do to one another, to ourselves. Um, and I think for me, that's that aim.
Here, here. Very good.
And the aim is also to, I mean, ultimately is also to heal. I mean, I'm stating the very obvious, which is that when we address the past and we talk about these grievances and we sit at the table, this is the way to heal. The way to heal is not pushing things under the rug. I have multiple examples. Um, but so when you address this in this fictional or based on real events context, this may also be a way to open a dialogue. I'm just also wondering, maybe because I'm personally removed obviously from the African American experience, do you think it's easier for me to to read this and then kind of have a good night's sleep after it? Or is that like, do you get feedback from folks from your cultural background that say like, "Oh my God, this enraged me so much I had to punch a wall"?
So not the punching a wall, but so I think it just people are individuals, and so I think some people, regardless of their background, are touched in ways, and it might be that they have either a personal relationship with someone who maybe they have there's a history of slavery and trauma in their family, and then for others it's just it's that cultural, I guess, that larger legacy of slavery that I feel like everyone in America is in some way touched by that legacy of slavery. Um, so I think it touches people in different ways. I do get messages from people who are, I guess, troubled, finding that they've experienced something that they hadn't expected to experience, and they're touched by it. And for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that idea
Hmm.
of the story touching people. And I think you're right. It is, it's to heal all. I feel like all of us are hurting, and so ideally through reading and through dialogue and having these discussions, we can start to heal ourselves.
Hmm. A couple of comments here on the YouTube stream. Um, Medio Gary says she's reading The Swarm by Frank Schätzing. Frank Schätzing is a German sci-fi author who is really, really fantastic. So Frank Schätzing, folks, with umlaut, Schätzing umlaut. I'll put it in the chat later. Wrote a book called Limit, really, really good. Angelika Kowalski says, "What about people with dyslexia like me? Reading is hard, but it's an accomplishment to complete a book. I like self-help books. To let me know all is well." Angelica, thank you, because we talk about this often, and I wish Shyla would be here. Shyla is doing another event in SL. The we talk a lot about dyslexia and other um, learning disabilities or ability diverse folks who, in many cases, have actually been sort of, you know, shamed in early on in school because they couldn't keep up with reading, and oftentimes it was misdiagnosed or not diagnosed. And a lot of people carry into their adulthood uh, very negative feelings connected with reading. And that's, I don't have any statistics and I'm not a doctor. I play one in Second Life. Um, I don't even have a psychology degree like Yvonne has, or whatever, how many semesters. Um, it is something that I think is very widespread. Um, yes, Angelica in Germany, exactly. I have a lot of German friends, but also American friends, where it's basically, oh, she's slow or whatever, and then of course you are in a peer situation where your other peers in the class kind of ridicule you, and that is brought into adulthood. Folks here in the audience, or anybody, if you have ways that you dealt with this yourself, or if you have any, um, you know, tips how to deal with this as an adult. I would say, as somebody who is not suffering from it, but I've documented a lot of folks with this and other disabilities in my documentaries, I can tell you that some people overcame it with a lot of help and kindness from their friends to really deprogram them from the shame. Sometimes the path is via short books. Sometimes the path is via poetry. Sometimes, interesting. Angelica is saying it made me an overachiever to read the big books. That is very interesting. That's another, I guess, another coping mechanism. Wonderful book club today. We're going all over the place, just like I intended. Where were we, Con and Yvonne? Hijacking the sofa here.
Can I just say, I would not use the word hijacking.
I think you want to steal that sofa. I gotta be very careful. These sofas disappear, Yvonne. You have no idea. These are expensive sofas.
I came back because I had left my dragon statue here last time, and I thought I'll just sneak in and I'll get it, and no one will ever see me.
Oh, see, I knew there was. So my suspicion is confirmed. Um, Stella here in the chat says maybe it was like what you asked me on the book 1000 Splendid Suns. Did I feel the protagonist had overcome their obstacles in Afghanistan? I said yes, but it was a huge struggle. I had to fight to survive and overcome oppression, abuse, and still made it out alive. Oh yeah, we talked about that. That was interesting. I remember. AJ is saying one of my students back when I taught was diagnosed with dyslexia in seventh grade. His senior year, he won a local award because he'd set up a program in his old elementary room to help kids who had trouble reading. Now, uh, these are wonderful stories, and it's good for them. I wish though we had much more acknowledgement in society that an issue such as dyslexia or any other condition is not associated with being, stupid, lazy, or anything in between. Choose, pick any word, because I feel that broadly speaking in society, this is still how we look at this in this really ridiculous, superficial black and white way. And I mentioned earlier before you came in, Yvonne, my son was assigned a book, which is it's a great book, but it's in very antiquated German, and it was assigned reading in ninth grade. So I wish the teacher had given a little bit more context, or maybe a little sort of fun way to find your way into it, rather than saying you got to read this in a week. Um, because these texts are important, I feel, but they need much more context and a nice sort of framework and a nice sort of I don't know, like a something where they can bloom again. So I feel very often for kids this stuff is age it's not age appropriate. You see what I'm saying? It's not age appropriate because it has questionable um, content. It's age inappropriate because it is outside of a teenager's own experience. And unless the teacher is very good and puts it into this context, and it can be done, but very often it's not. It's just like read this, get graded on it. If you're not graded well on it, it's your problem. So
Are you able to talk to the teacher there? Like, are you able to? Because I wonder if they are either not recognizing that these books do need this context, and maybe they feel like they don't have time, or maybe they do, and they would really welcome hearing that. Because wouldn't that be a great project to have this year's students create like some sort of notes to engage students for next year?
Oh yeah, and especially this text I was telling Con earlier and the folks here that this is a text um, about sort of a forbidden love in the 19th century. Boy, girl, parents hate each other, and it ends very tragically. So it really really connects with people. I was gonna say my son's specific German literature teacher in Germany is very good, and I had several discussions with her, and she assigns really good books. This is a book that is mandated by the state. Okay, again, I'm not objecting to this particular book. I feel that these classics are important, and but I feel they're just like that. There's a bunch of administrators. They say like the Germans need to learn about the German superiority of the culture. So in ninth grade, we're gonna read this now. Oh, the name of the book. Actually, let me look this up. It's called Romeo and Julia auf dem Dorf. I don't. I have to look up what the English translation is. So Yvonne, my son's teacher is phenomenal, and I actually don't doubt that she put this into some context. But there's this disconnect between the state administrators who put this curriculum together and leave very very little freedom to the individual teacher to put something together that resonates with the kids. I think that's the main problem. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. And so maybe I guess that's where it's great. I think I was actually um, semi here, so I could hear some of that. And I think you were saying that you and your son were. I think as I was coming in, you were talking about it, and I think you said you and your son are reading this together. Is that right?
Yeah, we read it together, but again, this is again an issue that I have because I'm privileged. I work from home, I'm available, I'm flexible, I can do this. But I expect more from our society. I expect more from the public sector. I like to pay taxes, but I like these taxes to go into uh, the right places so that we can strengthen people who are not as privileged as I am. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this particular topic and many others. So Ayn Rand and I, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things.
Yes, I heard that part too when I came in. See, I was really here.
You were
It was
really
like I was just
here.
semi invisible.
Right,
You
right.
were paying attention, Yvonne.
Uh, c- uh, I have to look up this book real quick. So cover me and talk about what you guys want to talk about, anxiety or what you're reading. I'm gonna look at this book real quick, and folks, can't take it over.
Okay.
Let me look at this book
You know,
here.
I talked earlier about using reading nonfiction travel to kind of take me away from some of the craziness of having an office job. And over the years, I found it to be rewarding, and it helped me many times select my own journeys along the way. What about anyone else? Yvonne, let's start with you. Have you ever used reading to maybe guide your real life?
Um, I so I have. So back when I was let's see, I was still in New Jersey, and I was kind of like at one of those points in my life where I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing. So I was working, and I knew I had always wanted to get back to school, to college. Um, but at that point, I just couldn't figure out how I was going to do it, and I felt like I just wasn't sure. And also at that time, I was going to clubs like it was a job, and that might have been part of the problem. But at some point while I was there, I started reading a lot of books by Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, and other books. And it seemed like some of the things that some of the other books I was reading had in common was Baltimore. And so I convinced a friend that we needed to move to Baltimore. And at the time, I really can't remember if I told her that it was because the books I was reading were set in Baltimore. I don't know that that would have come up in conversation. But because of the books, and it was just that there was so much possible, and there were characters that were doing interesting things, and it just seemed like a place where I wanted to be.
Did real life Baltimore disappoint you when you got there after having read all the books?
Um, Parts of it did, and parts of it didn't. I was in Baltimore, well, in Maryland and outside of Baltimore for 20 years. And I enjoyed it. I got married there. I had kids there. I got divorced there. I went back to school and did all these different things. But for some reason, it never quite felt like home.
Hmm.
I
So,
know
yeah.
that feeling. I know that feeling. There are some places you can live there for. I lived in London once for 4 years, and while I enjoyed the experience, it was never quite home.
Hmm. What did you do, I guess, to
Home
either
is
make
where
it
the
more feel like
broadband is.
home?
Sorry, I'm back from the internet. Home is where the broadband is. That's a good
I
one.
feel like that's not the answer.
No, it's
I,
not.
I happen to agree with Yvonne there. Yvonne, you were asking me a question.
I was asking you, so what did you either do in London to make that feel like home, or where are you that does feel like home, or where have you been that feels like home?
Well, right now, home is in central New Jersey, near Princeton, um, and I've been here for a good number of years. You know, it was a location after I came back from London that was midway between where my family lived at the time, between New York City and Philadelphia. I was commuting into New York City, and it just became home. I married and just settled down in this area. London was a comfortable place. I guess I was single at the time. I was telling myself working way too many hours in the office, which maybe contributed to it not feeling like home. You know, I tried to take advantage of being in London as much as I could to see what was there, go out, meet the people, just walk through the streets. Um, and I wouldn't say anything bad about the London experience, just that I never felt like I was home there. Now, maybe that has to do with me being Irish and there being English, but again, they were very nice to me, so I won't go there. Um, but for home, for me, home has to be friends and family. Um, you know, I'm in a part of the country now where I'm a short distance away from the places I grew up in, people I knew. Uh, that's home for me. If I picked up and went to say Seattle, I could probably enjoy it, have a nice time out there, but it's not home.
Folks,
I
And
think,
can
I'm
I
sorry,
chime in here? This is a wonderful
please.
of course.
discussion. But since I have to, I'm looking at the clock and the topic. Where is home? Books about home. This is going to be our next subject for the next free for all. But I have to do some house cleaning. Then we can continue. But I want to bring it back to the books because there's a bunch of comments here. For example, Octavia Butler is mentioned. Octavia Butler is an amazing author. Parable of the Sower is one of my favorite books. Also, I found the German book that we're talking about. It's called A Village Romeo and Juliet. That's the English translation. I find it again, um, yeah, actually quite important for young people. But like I said, the issues with antiquated language. I do want to read something as well from Annabelle Banks, and we'll do that at the end. Her book, Exercises in Control, is right here on the stand. Let me say a couple more things. Next week, we have a super special guest, and I'm zooming in for the folks who are watching on the stream. Kelly Robson is a Hugo, Nebula, whatever other award winning sci-fi and fantasy author, and it's a deep dive one-on-one with her and her current book. It's a novella. It's called, I'm zooming in, Gods, Monsters, and the Lucky Peach. Now, as earlier mentioned, somebody mentioned romance, time travel, or whatever combo. This is not romance, but it involves time travel, and it is a very deep meditation on our current moment, and a really deep critique on sort of the social fabric that has evolved in the economic system that we're living under. So Kelly Robson will be here. There's a whole bunch of her stories on ebook only. I'm reading them right now, although I don't like to read digitally, but they're only available from Tor in digital form. So check them out. Kelly Robson is really really cool, and her stuff that is on the Kindle only is very much gothic horror. So it's not straight sci-fi or it's not straight fantasy either. Lastly, another book that I just got is this one. I'm zooming in. It's on the table here. It's Michael Brooks, who is um, a commentator and a talk show host of the Michael Brooks Show and the co-host of the Majority Report, which are political talk shows. He wrote a book called Against the Web. I highly recommend it. You can get this from Red Emma's, which is a bookstore in. Where is this bookstore? It's in Baltimore. Um, redemmas.org has this book. I highly recommend this book. This is about 90 pages from Zero Books, and as the subtitle suggests, is a cosmopolitan answer to the new right. So Michael Brooks basically analyzes the phenomenon of the new right media ecosystem of people like Jordan Peterson, David Rubin, folks that have YouTube channels and who are very well funded from a machine that grabs young folks who are very often left alone by the system um, and their parents who are sort of wrapped up often in trying to make a living. I'm going on and on about this. Just get Against the Web, Michael Brooks. You won't regret it. It's a really really important analysis of what's happening in social media in terms of very questionable political indoctrination, ahistorical indoctrination, which is really dangerous. As a parent, I feel that that is a huge threat. All right. Now I'm going to get up now from the couch, and it's going to be hard because normally Strawberry Linden is running the camera. Today I'm running the camera, and I'm running myself. I'm going in front of the stand here, and I would like to read a story from Annabelle Banks's Exercises in Control. But before I do that, that's about 6, 7 minute story, and it's awesome. Uh, do we have any comments or last words? And we can go over time. I'm just going to cut the stream close to the hour. Does anybody want to comment um, in text or in voice? Again, I'm going to put out the reading list right after. Quibble has already commented. He is anti-Marxist. All right. Um, you don't have to be a Marxist to read this book. You don't have to be a Marxist to be anti fascist, I think. Quibble she, sorry. Sorry, I misgendered you too. I apologize. Any comments before my wonderful voice coming through a Sennheiser microphone will serenade you with a really awesome story from this super quirky book that I also recommend, Exercises in Control by Annabelle Banks. No? Have I killed the room? Good.
Go
Good.
for it.
See, you mentioned a Marxist bookstore. Everybody goes quiet. Um, this is out from Influx Press, by the way. Influx Press, I don't know what their website is, probably influxpress.com. This is Annabelle Banks, Exercises in Control. These are short stories. They are very strange and extremely powerful, but strange. And this is, well, I don't know. I love them. So here we go. This story is called Common Codes. For this to make sense, you need to understand that I don't wear a watch. In fact, I never wear jewelry of any kind. My dad didn't, so I don't. I never queried it, just saw it as another passed on prejudice, some crossed out line on the blueprint of masculinity, or maybe the remnants of an old spell, a practical charm come about from noting how earrings and bracelets first weighed down the drowning boys and then ensured the corpses were rifled. Better to keep afloat, unmolested. Anyway, watches, psh, they're dated. It's like lugging a typewriter around in case I want to write a letter, which I never do, incidentally. That's what PAs are for. I sent emails from my phone, a device that never leaves my person, which also displays the "can you guess?" So, yes, I don't wear a watch. Got it? Good. So, when she slowed outside the bank, cocked her head, and inquired about the time, I should not have looked at my wrist, right? But I did. And not just a glance. Oh, no. In fact, I gave her the whole shebang. First, a hand flick to bring up the jacket sleeve. Next, the shirt cuff pat. Two fingers only to slide the cotton aside. And then the final move. One finger extended to tap a dial that, quite honestly, had never been born. And in that moment, you know what I was thinking? Alien invasion. Don't smile. Then I rifled through the better educated parts of my brain and came up with the phrase learned behavior. Learned from the TV, all those old films, the black and whites, you know the ones. I'm no real fan, but I have seen the ones you're supposed to see, just like I've read the right books, bought the right art. And in those films, the actors, suited, smart mouth, are either checking watches or kissing dames. Maybe that's what it was. She asked me the time, and I thought about kissing her, and the two ideas had idea babies in my head. So, yes, I was thinking about kissing her, but only idly. I'm not some mad kiss stealer, but had caught the scent of her lip gloss from sweet fruit stickiness, and it crossed my mind that I kissed her, I would end up sticky sweet and would lick my lips afterwards. I like sweet things, I reasoned, and I'm hungry, and she's tall and fine. Then I did the wristwatch routine, revealing nothing but bare, except for hair, skin. Crap. And she noticed. Of course, she's a noticer. Oh, you forgot to put your watch on? After a second of frantic scrabble mind to find any answer, I gave a weak smile. Must have fallen off. She pursed her temptingly lacquered lips, then said, expensive? No, I mean, not really. Her brown eyes, that soft mouth. Something else was needed here. But it was my, I took a mental breath. Father's? But he didn't wear a watch, as I had already mentioned, and lies can be fun, but not when they override the memory of a dead parent. It's the only thing I had to remember my brother by. The other thing you need to know is that I don't have a brother, only two sisters, who greatly annoy me when they arrive for their once-a-year visit, and who I love madly, weeping in their shoulders before they drive away. I'm so sorry. She touched my arm. That's terrible. When did he die? Now, you might think this is a bit intrusive for a stranger to ask, but my actual response was, here's a woman who is good with people. Because you know those bullshit courses? I've done them all. Good sandwiches, bad coffee, and all say the same thing. Ask questions, give room for the answers. Ask again. Don't worry about rudeness. We all need the opportunity to speak, and if you're a sensitive communicator, which I am, no doubt about that at all, you'll feel it when you're overstepping. This woman, either a taught or natural emotional water temperature tester, was being kind. I thought about kissing her again, but only quickly. In my head, she liked it and asked for more, but on the street, she was still frowning, expectant. But I didn't feel up to murdering my new brother. He didn't die, I said. We lost him. He went on a diving holiday in Mali, Madagascar, Michigan, Malaysia, and, well, I suppose we just never heard from him again. I rubbed at my anxious cheek and only just avoided covering my liar mouth. He's not dead. The authorities assured us of that. Just wanted a new life, to leave us behind. Her eyebrows moved again. Such an expressive face. And I followed her thinking. Had we as a family done something terrible? Was he escaping an abusive life? A brother who hated him, bullied him, perhaps over a much coveted and eventually stolen watch? I had to fix that. It's not that we weren't close, I went on, hand coming to rest over my heart. I love my brother. It's just that he had problems, married very young, and she cheated, died. Don't judge. An in-law death I could cope with. The woman cocked her head again, but before she could inquire, oh so gently, about the details, I carried on speaking. Then the drugs, then the getting clean, and it was so hard on him. I think he'd had enough. Built a new world, beginning across the water, in the water. Then I looked up to stare over her head for a moment, feeling the truth of my next statement. He's always loved the sea. I sighed. She sighed. We went for coffee. I took her number. Her lip gloss tasted like cherry sweets, just like I'd thought. And when I licked my lips, she laughed and said I looked like a wolf, which reminded me of a game I used to play at school. But that was then. Baby, she said, standing over me, I have such great news. My back had been giving me not so merry hell, and there is nothing that helps it more than lying on the floor. No pillow, nothing. I need a straight line for my spine to relax into so I can feel the nubs and sprockets clacking back into place. Oh, yeah? Yeah. She slung her knee over me, sat astride, and then bent to put her mouth by my ear. I found your brother. I don't have a brother. The corona of her hair, coconut scented, concealed our faces. Kiss me. She did, then gracefully rolled off to lay at my side. Don't say that, she murmured. You do. No. Her fingers wrapped mine. You know something? I think your sadness was the reason I gave you my number. Couldn't have you lose a brother, then a watch, and then get blown out by some hot stranger. Who was that? Did somebody walk past me when we were talking? She play slapped my thigh. Get up, get dressed. He'll be here soon. In the shower, lathered and aching, I made a plan to deny everything. This is another strategy that they teach us at work. Delete emails, shred the memos, shrug, and walk away. But my brother was too, alive, was part of our relationship. Also, I'm not a monster. I felt a little bad for this real life person at their evening's excitement would soon be ruined by the blunt stupidity of truth. Their brother was gone, and my lie had made their pain worse. And yet, I reasoned as I rubbed my buttocks with the towel, it didn't have to ruin the evening. We could just have a meal, expressing sorrow, have a chat over rich pasta and white chocolate profiteroles, learn about each other, and then say goodbye. I'd pick up the tab as a gesture. We could shake hands. This was my plan, and it was good. When he arrived, when Carl arrived, I should say, for that was his name, and as I'd never given him one myself, it seemed as good as any, with his iron dark blue shirt and bottle of good wine, he didn't even hesitate. You look the same, he said, and there was a tear, I swear to God, rolling down his cheek. I missed you so much. He opened his arms and stepped forward, and that's when it happened. Felt like an alien invasion. Was probably learned behavior. This monkey see, monkey do brain, this dance picker upper triggered muscle memory of an action I've never performed. Because he had opened his arms and stepped forward. Do you see? Can you picture this? That man, clean shirt, clean smell, white teeth, my height, was walking towards me with arms open and a tear in his eye. And one moment I was ready with the I'm so sorry's, and the next I was moving forward into the hug, face into his neck, fist thumping on his back, and my voice, choked small, hoarse, with long held in weeping, muffled by skin and emotion, still spoke out loud enough for all to hear. Carl, Carl, it's you. And that's it. Common Codes by Annabelle Banks. That book is nuts. This was actually the most uh, traditional, normal story, I guess. There's a lot of experimental stuff in there. It's absolutely awesome. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will now wrap up the stream, saying thanks again to Strawberry Linden, Patch Linden, Brett, Marianne McCann, Kralos for the avatars, and Silas Merlin for our sculpture that our special guests get. We have next week Kelly Robson, and then on the 27th, put that in your calendar. We're revealing a very special new venue for Anne Vandermeer, who may be the one of the greatest editors in the sci-fi uh, field of all times. and Vandermeer, and possibly up to 15 special guests from the Avatars Inc. anthology will come to a new special venue here on this sim. If you're smart, you might find it. It's floating somewhere very up high. So big thank you for everybody who was here. We lost a lot of people, probably because I mentioned a Marxist bookstore. Here's Chu, Becky, Storm, Elfbiter, Strawberry, Ghostspeed, AJ, Angelica, Peter Coach, Quibble, Raby, Momi, and Khan and Yvonne. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
And
Thank you for being.
that concludes the book club. I know Yvonne wants to probably go shopping for more clothes. How about that stereotype?
I know, right? I don't think you should be perpetuating that stereotype. Although
I think
my sim,
stereotypes
she
need
could
to.
use a new shirt.
No, no, no. Your shirt is fine. You look great. You look great. Uh, let's talk about this off the air. I just wanted to help. I'm so happy that a lot of authors actually really enjoy SL and don't think it's some sort of novelty that they have to do in order to to sell their books, because that was a fear of mine when I was like, okay, I'm going to approach these people and they're going to say, okay, I'll do it if we get an audience. But my goal is to really create a community with readers. So going to cut the stream now, folks, and then we can hang out a little bit more informally. Goodbye, everyone from the stream. Let me take another quick look. Oh, Jules Rivera is on. Oh, she's on the YouTube stream. Jules, you're late. Jules actually had a launch. She's an amazing illustrator. Ah, we'll talk about this next time. I'll put it in the I'll put it in the to read pile. Okay, and cutting the stream.